Welcome back to another Flutter tutorial. In today's episode, let's learn how we can create stateful widgets in Flutter. In this episode, let's see how we can refactor this class right here, dashboard page, to be a stateful widget instead of this stateless widget. So before we do that, let's first understand what is a stateful widget. A stateful widget is a widget that has the ability to keep track of a state, and so when the state is changed, this widget can rebuild itself to reflect that change. And what is a state? A state is a data inside of your stateful widget that we need to keep track. So for this data to be a state, it needs to change while this widget is active and also request an update of the layout. So now let's understand how we can create a stateful widget. So first of all, come right here and comment all this code. And we'll use bits of this code to create our stateful widget. So come right here, copy these bits of code right here, paste it. And now instead of extending a stateless widget, we need to extend now a stateful widget. So come right here and select this option, stateful widget. Now inside of this class, we'll need to override the createState method. So do an add and do an override of this createState. Here, instead of using this method this way, you can use an arrow function. And here you need to provide the name of your class that will implement this state class. So for that, let's create a new class. So you can make it private by using this underscore, and you can name it the same way as your stateful widget. So this will be private dashboard page, and you can also add the state word in the end to follow the Flutter name convention right here. And this will extend a state class, and it will implement this state class right here. So you need to use this angle bracket right here. And if you hover over this class, you can see this class will take a stateful widget as an argument. So you can copy right here, dashboard page, and paste it right here. So now let's, inside of this state class, we now need to do an override of our build method. So do an override right here. So we have this build method right here. We need to display the same layout. So just copy this code right here and replace it here. And let's now remove these comments. And this is how you can create a stateful widget in Flutter. You can see right here, you need now to copy the name of your class that will implement the state, call it right here. Let's add our parentheses and then add a semicolon to remove this error. So like I said, this is the syntax to create a stateful widget. You can see inside of this one single file right here, dashboard underscore page, we have now two classes. The first class will extend a stateful widget, and this will call the createState method or override this method, and this will call our class that will implement our state. So inside of this state class, now we have to do an override of this build method. Notice that with this stateless widget, we'll do an override inside of this class stateless widget, but with a stateful widget, we need to call it inside of this state class. It's inside of this state class that now we have the ability to keep track of our state. So come right here, let's delete all these codes right here. We don't need it anymore. So just select everything and delete it. So now let's see how we can keep track of our state. For that, let's rebuild the layout that comes when you create a new Flutter project. So let's create a new variable right here of type int. Let's make it private and call this a counter. This will be equal to 0 by default. And then let's create a method to increment this counter. So let's make it private, and this will call increment counter. And then inside of this counter, you can call this variable right here and increment it by adding 2 plus plus. So now you come right here inside of your scaffolding widget. Now let's call in a floating action button. So call this property right here, floating action button, and this will take a floating action button widget. Inside of it, in this one press, will assign this increment counter. So when a user click on this floating action button, this method will be called. And here for the child, I want to use an icon widget, and let's call the icons class dot and use the edge icon right here. So now let's go inside of our method right here, build body, and let's change this layout right here. So right here I want to wrap this text widget now with a column widget, and then let's make it center by using this property main axis alignment. This will take the main axis alignment dot center, and then for the text, let's say you have clicked this many times, and then instead of using this double quotation, let's use single quotation right here, and then let's do a string incorporation calling our counter variable right here. So now let's save everything, let's reload our app. So now let's go to our dashboard page right here. Let's enter this text. You can come right here, give it a comma, and then call the property text alignment. This will take the text alignment in none with the value of center. Save everything, and now your text is centered right here. So now when the user click on this button right here, we'll increment our counter. So let's see it. Click on this button, you see right here nothing is happening. This is because to be able to keep track of this counter variable, we need to call our setState here, and then call this variable inside of it. If you hover over the setState method, you can see this will take a void method. That's why you are using right here an anonymous method and calling our counter. So now when the user click on this floating action button, we'll call this increment counter, and this increment counter will implement this setState. So the setState will increment this counter and also notify our StatelessWidget that our state has changed. So we need to redraw our layout to reflect this change. So this build method will be rerun inside of this StatelessWidget every time your state change. So save everything. Let's reload it. So get started. So now when the user click on this button right here, you can see our counter is incremented. So this is how we can work with StatelessWidget. Now you can see that our app will become more dynamic, because now when the user interacts with our app, we can reflect this change. And this state can be any type of data. Right here we are using an int, but it can be a boolean, it can be a string, it can be a widget. Let's say if you have a list view widget and you want to add items in this list, so every time a user adds a new item, we want to reflect this change and update our list view to add this item. And the same thing happens when you remove an item. You can also keep track of the state to change a background color of a widget or any other type of property that you want to change when a user interacted with your app. So this is it for this video. As you can see, you needed to implement these two classes, but once you are comfortable creating your StatelessWidget, you can comment right here. And if you use STL and select the option StatelessWidget and just change your name of your widget right here, you can see this will implement a StatelessWidget for you automatically, so you don't have to implement this syntax. But for now, just get used to implement this syntax. So once you are comfortable, you can just call STL and select the option StatelessWidget. So this is it for this video. As you can see, now our app is becoming more dynamic. So in the next video, let's see how we can implement different layouts using a stateful widget. So this is it for this video. Give a like to this video so we can get more exposure on YouTube, and also subscribe so you can get notification when new videos are coming out. See you on the next one.